Hey folks, going to be doing a rules overview of Carnegie. This is a game where you are managing a business essentially, just as Andrew Carnegie did. You are going to be putting new departments into your office building. You're going to be sending your workers out and then to the board and then pulling them back to gain resources and money. Um, you're going to be moving your workers throughout your building to activate different departments. You're going to be building public works projects or infrastructure or housing out on the board here. Try to make connections between major cities for points. And you're going to be doing donations, which you can see at the very top of the four people up there, or the four sections 1, 2, 3, 4. Those were strictly just going to give you bonus point or victory points at the end of the game. Um, this game is very much a point salad game. You're going to get points from a ton of different things. It is a very Euro game. It's not does not appear to be too terribly complicated. You're definitely going to have a lot of options of things to do. Um, so let's go ahead and just go ahead and dive in here. Um, this is the timeline right here. And these are four separate rows. These are all tiles. They are double sided, and there are four more that I did not use. So you basically shuffle these up, and then you choose one side or the other. It doesn't matter. You pick it at random, and you put them in a row, and then you put the end cap pieces on here. These are the markers to indicate how far along the track you are with taking the events and the actions. They're big, thick wooden pieces that are painted and screen printed with these uh, the things. That one's kind of off center a little bit, but that's okay. Um, they're going to start over here on the left, and then once basically every marker gets over to the right of the timeline, it's going to be the end of the game. You're basically going to have 20 rounds in this game all the time. Each player is going to get their player tray that contains all their pieces. It's going to contain all their meeples. It's going to contain all their circles, their cylinders here that they're going to be using to indicate what they've built and what is yet to be built out on their board off to the side here. There is a token that's basically a free action token. This may or may not come into play depending on how many players you have. It basically allows you to ignore whatever the first player has chosen for their action. Basically, first player chooses an action, everybody has to follow that. You could play this and take any action, but you're losing 3 victory points out of the end of the game. If you have this at the end of the game, it's 3 victory points. There is money as a currency in the game. It is very shiny. It actually just looks black on on the screen there. There you can kind of see it if I had the light on it a little bit. This a 10, tens, ones, and fives. Um, so we'll put this back there. You have goods. These wooden tokens are goods tokens. You're going to be using these to pay for various things. They're just standard blocks tokens. This is the deluxe version of the game, so I do have some of these components may not match up to what you have. There's a victory point marker. I'm not going to put it out, and you have all your meeples. I'm going to get a couple of those out just to kind of show how these rules work. I do not have the game actually fully set up for if you were start playing. Just kind of going through it, the rules a little bit. You're going to have 10 of your meeples that are going to go out on your board. I'll get to that in a second. Um, Depending on the number of players, you're going to be blocking off different sections of these cities. Um, for a 4 player game, everything's open. 3 player game, I think you're going to be marking off 9, and then for a 2 player game, I think 18 of them get marked off, so you can't use them. Um, yep, 18 are going to go out. And a 3-player 9 go out. Yep, that is correct. There's a little bit of additional setup that goes into the game. When you start, you're going to take one of your cylinders off your board and place it out into a city that is a medium or major city. So the medium cities don't have the flaring, and then the major cities have the little flaring at the tops, and then the minor cities are just a single space for you to put a cylinder on. And then you're going to be getting a department. These are all the departments up here. There may be, all of them may not be available. There are basically 2 of each department, so it is slim pickings in terms of if you're playing with 4 people. They're all going to be out there, but if you're playing with less people, then not all of those department tiles are going to be there. Actually, for a 4-player game, you still do remove 4 tiles. That is interesting. Okay. Then you will get to move some of your workers around on your board, and I will get to that in a moment, to kind of to set yourself up, and then the game essentially starts. The rules say that the most daring player becomes the first player. I have no idea how you're supposed to determine that. It's probably just going to be a die roll. All right, so let's switch over to the player board here. This is your player board, which is going to have where you're going to be building your tableau. This is your office building. These are your different departments. This is your lobby where all of your workers who have either been pulled back from projects or you've just gained via a project will start out, and you have to move them out of your lobby in order to get them into the different departments to make use of them. The major iconography in the game has to deal with your business. So this icon here, which is the little meeple with the arrows up and down, left and right, this is human resources. This basically allows you to move your people around your office into different departments. You can only move orthogonally. You cannot move diagonally. And you have a permanent worker pre-printed on your board that is always there. So when you would activate this action, you get 3 moves per worker you have here. So if I have 2 workers here, I would get 6 moves, and if I have 3 workers here, I get 9 moves. Now, if a worker is standing up like this, that means they are active, and they will actually activate when you take this action. If the worker is laying down, they are inactive, and they do not count towards your towards activation of this department. So, for instance, if this was set up this way, then I would have 1 active worker, 2 active workers, so I'd get 6 moves, even though I have 3 people in here. Now, when I'm going to move, I can, again, like I said, move orthogonally. So it doesn't have to be a worker that's on here. It could be a worker that's in your lobby. In fact, you're probably going to want to be moving your workers out of your lobby, and not maybe very rarely move workers out of actual buildings or out of departments because as soon as you move a worker, so let's say I have 9 moves here, right? So I can go 1, 2. As soon as I get to wherever I'm going, that worker starts inactive. They get laid down. They will not. You will not be able to activate them until the end of the round. You can also make moves such as this. You can go 1, 2, and now I have a worker up here getting ready for a building to be placed on them. Or I could even go higher. I could go to the top floor. At the end of the game, for every department you have up in this floor, there's going to be 3 victory points. And for every other floor, it's only 2 victory points. So you may want to move workers up toward the top floor. It's going to cost you more movements, so you're going to be able to move less. The number of workers you're going to be able to move is less than if you were just moving them to the other floors. All right. So we'll put 1 here. So that's the human resources action with moving those. The next one is going to be the management action you have here. And the management action, when you take it, you have your choice, essentially. You can leave, for every worker here that's actually active, you have two choices. You can get $3 or a goods cube, or you can send that worker on a mission, and that's what this symbol means here that shows the meeple being put down onto a circle. And if you do that, you will get $6 or you will get two goods cubes. So when you play, if you were to take, so if I were to take this one, if I were to take the $3 or the cubes, I get a cube or $3, easy. If I do this, I would take the worker that I'm actually taking that action with, comes off of my board and goes onto the main board. So I will just go ahead and do that right now because we are going to get to pulling them back here in a moment. So those are my two options with that management action. Now I have a second management department here, and it gives me additional options. So I could either, again, for each active meeple, if one's laying down, it's not active, so you can't use it. But for each active meeple, I can spend a goods cube, to take a department from the supply and place it. It will cost me one goods cube if I place it onto a section where I already have a worker. So if I were to take, let's say I'm just going to build this, I can spend one goods cube and build that there, and I already have a worker laying down there ready to go. I can activate him at the end of the turn so that he produces the turn after that, if I would take that action. Alternatively, I can pay two goods cubes instead of one to place a department anywhere else. So I could place it here. I had no worker here, so it would have cost me two of my goods cubes that would go back into the supply, and then now I would have that building or that department available to me to move somebody into. So that is that management tile or management department action. You have two management departments. The next one is construction. Construction, if I had a worker here, for each worker in here that is active, meaning they're stood up, I can basically take this worker and send them on a mission out onto the board. And what I will do is I will take this worker, and then I go and I look over here on the right side. So I'm going to spend goods equal to which of these trays or these actions I would like to activate. So, or to build. If I want to do a housing action, it's going to cost me one good. That's the cost right there. So I would then take my cylinder that's on here, and it follows the worker that I pulled off of my board. And then what I do is I come over here to the main board, and let's say I wanted to send him on up here to the east. He's on a mission to the east, so I put my worker down. And now I can place my cylinder in any of these eastern cities. It does have to go over a housing circle because that's what I chose to do. So I could do Boston, and I could cover up I'm building a housing project in Boston. Okay? Simple enough. That would have cost me one goods cube, and that gets my worker off of my player board onto the main board. Alternatively, if we switch back over here, the investment here. Do I have these backwards? I have these backwards. Those are in the wrong slots. So alternatively, I could have done an investment and did the same thing for one cube. Or I could build infrastructure. which is 2 cubes, and done the same thing. For a public works project, which is what this is, one does not start off there. I can't take that action. I have to research it first. So there's no cube for me to take, or no cylinder here that starts off for me to take off to actually build a public works project. I have to research them first, and we will be coming to that shortly. But just for the time being, we're going to say that I built an actual investment section here. I think that's called investment. Let me look at that real quick. I'm pretty sure. Maybe it says in setup what those are. That's 10. The housing tab. Let's see, this is B. Those are project tabs. That's what they are called. Where does it tell me what those tabs are actually called, though? Taking income. Housing projects, industry projects. The other one's public works, but what is the money one called? Is it on the back of the rule book? It's got to say it somewhere in here. I've just been calling it investment projects. Commerce project. That's what it is. Commerce project. Okay. Okay. So, that was the construction action here. And the fourth action is the R&D action. And for each worker that you have active here, so say I have a worker that's active here, I get 3 research points. So if I had 2 here, I'd get 6. What can I do with the research points? Well, 2 different things. One is I can upgrade my project tabs here. So you'll see right here, it costs me 1 research point, and then I can upgrade that and slide it out. There's a circle there, so I'd get another cylinder that would go down. Or I could spend 2 here to pull this one out as well. I have 3 total, so I could do that, and then I'd get a cylinder there, but I'm not going to do that. This one is 3, so I could spend all 3 just to do this, and I'd have to move that one back in. That would come out to the next section. Another cylinder would go over top of it. Or, alternatively, we can come to the main board, and you can increase your markers on these tracks for each of the 4 sections here. So each player's marker is going to start off at the lowest level. And for instance, to go from here to here, it's going to be 3 research points. But when I get income back, I go from getting $1 to $4. From here to here is just 1. And I go from getting $1 to $2. It also increases I go from the buggy, the horse and cart, to a stagecoach. And then I could also transition to railway. There is a very end space on these tracks that only one person can get to, and that person, whoever gets there first, gets the reward. So if the first person to get here would get 3 goods cubes, and then immediately score 2 victory points on the board. If this is the victory point, it's a pentagram essentially. No, septagram, 7 sides, septagram. If the septagram is red, you score the points immediately, and you just keep track on the outside of the board. And if it is a blue, you don't score them till the end of the game. So those are the 2 things that you can use your research points for: increasing your tracks up here, or upgrading your project tabs here on your board. So that those are pretty much the actions that you're going to be taking on your player board. There are a ton of different departments that do various different things, and I'm not going to go all over all of those, but these are the starting and base ones. So now let's switch back over here to the overview, and we will talk about the timeline. So we kind of went over all the actions for your player board. Now let's go over the flow of play, is I guess the best way to put it. The first player is going to select a timeline. When they select a timeline, they have this metal, or mine's metal. I think the one that comes with the regular game is just wooden. And they're going to choose. They're going to set it to the right of the action that they want to take after an event. So the first thing that's going to happen. Let's say I wanted to take a human resource action. I would take my gear and I would put it down here, just to the right of where the token currently sits. What that means is I'm going to have an east action. Okay, so, or an east event, rather. It happens before we take the action. So what happens during an event? Well, we're going to look over onto the board, and there are two types of events. The one event is the take income, and that has the picture of the meeples being removed. And then the other event is the donation event, and that has a picture of a cylinder with money being put down. So on an income event, starting with the first player, I believe it's the first player. Yes, starting with the first player, you have the option to remove your workers that you've sent out on projects off of the board to get rewards and resources. So you don't have to remove all of them. You can leave one out there, or you can remove none of them, keep them out there. But basically what you're going to do is you're going to pull your, if you decide to, you will pull one of your meeples off. It will go back into your lobby, laid down so it's inactive. And then what you're going to get is, for each meeple you pull off, you're going to get wherever your token is, whatever the reward says below this. So for instance, my token was right here, so I would get $1 for taking that one meeple off. No matter how many, if I pulled 2 off, right, then I would get $2. I get, this reward times how many you pull off. Then after that, you come over to your project tabs and you activate all project tabs that have a uncovered reward. So this is still covered up. This has no reward. These two are still both covered up. I haven't placed them. But this one has $2, so I would get 2 additional dollars. It is important to note that these rewards that you get, your income from here, is only done once. No matter how many of your workers you pull off of the main board. So this does not get multiplied by your number of workers. If I pull 2 off, I still just get $2. But I would get $2 versus $1 off the main board, based on my current, where my marker is on that track currently. So that is basically how you do the income. You activate the event. This was for the East, because that's where we activated. The Midwest activates the Midwest, so forth and so on. After, let's go to the donation first. So for the donation, you can make that donation. Your first your donation, how much it costs you to make a donation is variable. So your first donation is $5, and you would take a cylinder out of your, I believe you just take it out of your supply. Let me double check that. That's on page 14. Donation. Yep, It comes out of your supply of cylinders. And you will choose to place it on one of these donations at the top of the track here. It is important to note that only one person can choose each donation. These are going to score you victory points at the end of the game. So, for instance, if I chose this one, for each city that I have built infrastructure in, I get 2 victory points. Now, it is also important to note that each donation carries a maximum of 12 victory points. So even if I built in 6 cities, and these are, I believe that donation, let me double check, but I think that is only for the minor. No, these are small cities. So that one is a small city, and that is the single cities. So I would, if I built in 6 of those small cities anywhere on the board, I would get 6 times 2, which is 12 victory points. If I built in 7 cities, 7 times 2 is 14, but the max I can get is 12, so I still only get 12 victory points. So that's how donations work. You will just choose one, any one. Your first one's $5. Your second one's $10. Your third one's $15. Your fourth one's $20, etc. There is no limit on that. It just keeps going up and up and up and up and up. So it is important to also note that during setup, some of those may be marked off at random, depending on the number of players. So those are the 2 different types of events that you can do on the timeline, or that get triggered on the timeline. So we just had the East event where we took income back. Now, what happens is this token slides over to indicate that it's there and kicks out this gear, and the gear comes back to the first player. And now everybody gets to take a human resources action, which is what I went over previously on the player boards. So this would be moving your workers around. This would be taking the management action, which allows you to either get money and goods or bring new departments into your building. Construction allows you to move your cylinders off your player board onto the main board here. And the R&D allows you to increase your cylinders out here on your track, or upgrade your project tabs to get more projects for you to be able to put more cylinders out here. So that's basically the flow of the game. Once everybody's going to be able to take that action, then the first player gets passed to the player to the left. Rinse, repeat. You keep doing this basically until you get. Let's see. Let's do that and that and that. You're going to do this until you get to the very end. Now, when you would trigger the end here, I think that's the end. Let me look at that real quick. I believe those are events. No, the end is going to be when they're way over here. So let's say this one's down here. There we go. All right, so it is important to note that when you do place the gear on the events that are the very last events, you will get to basically do an East and a donation. And everybody will be able to do that. I just want to verify that that is accurate, that it's not just the person that has reached the end tile. The player may choose to do both, one or both. Take income and a donation, if so desire, if the gear is on one of these end spots. So let's say we decided to do we want to take another R&D action. So we place it to the right, which is off the board. Then what we do is we flip over this token. So we go the next one down, which it wraps around. So we'll flip that one over. And the gear actually will move up to here. So instead, we will take a donation action. Or event. After we're done with the donation event, this marker slides over just like before, kicks out the gear, but we take the previous action. So we would still take an R&D action. After everybody takes their R&D action, this gets flipped back over, and it just means that there's now one less human resources action that we could have taken. And that would continue. So for instance, if we had something like this and we wanted to take construction action, right? Well, construction's already at the end, so we'll go to the next one. Well, that gets flipped over. That's already at the end. So now this comes up here. This gets flipped over. So now we would take this action, which we could do one or both. Then this would get slid over. It would still remain flipped, and we would take the initial construction action that triggered this, and then both of these would get flipped over after that construction action is done to indicate that they can both be taken again. Once all of these are reached the end of the track, the end game triggers and you go to scoring. And you just count out points. There's all kinds of different ways. If the free action tokens were in play, those are 3 points at the end of the game. For every active worker you have out on your board, meaning they are stood up on your player board, you get a victory point. You get victory points for every building in the rows. I think, pretty sure it's every building. Let me just double check that. I don't think you have to have a row filled. Nope, it's each department in your. So for each department in this row and below, you get 2 points, including the ones that are pre-printed on the board. And then for the ones in the top row, you get 3 points. You will get points based on your where your project tabs are upgraded. So as you keep upgrading these, you will see that they start giving victory points. And the farthest along 1, 3 is the max. So that would score 3 victory points. You don't add them together. You just get 3, I believe. No, you do add them. So it would be 3, 2, and 1. That would be 2 and 1 for 3, etc. You will count those. Then you will count your links. So how you have constructed your network. So for instance, if I had New York here, and then I had Pittsburgh, and then I had Chicago, right? So I've built a link. I can trace a line from cities that I built stuff in, from Chicago to New York. That is a 1 link and a 1 link, so that's 2. And let's say that both of I had one, my east is up in the railroad section here, right? But my Midwest is only in the stagecoach section. And so then I would look at that's the lowest one I have, so I look at the stagecoach, and I have 2 links, so that would give me 6 points. 2, stagecoach, 6 points. Then you will get a point for each construction project built in a city. So, for instance, I have a construction project built in this city here. That gives me 3 points. This one gives me 3 points. This one gives me 3 points. This one gives me 2 points. If I had 2 in Pittsburgh, 2 projects built in Pittsburgh, that's 2 times 2, I get 4 points. And then we go to the donations, and those get calculated out with their max of 12. And then the player with the most points essentially wins the game. So that's basically how a play of Carnegie will go. You are managing your business on your player board and trying to get projects out there. You're wanting to send your workers out onto the board. You're probably not going to want to leave them out on the board for very long. You're going to want to be bringing those back so you keep continually getting that income. It's not something where you want to put a worker out and then work on getting your track up, to the highest it can before you pull them back. At every, most likely at every opportunity, you're going to be want to be pulling your workers back just so you can continue to get money or goods cubes, to continue to be able to operate your business by therefore building new departments, upgrading your project tabs, building new projects out, etc., etc., etc. This has a lot of engine building in it. I do think that I will enjoy this. It's very, I don't think it's overly thinky, but it is somewhat thinky. In addition, there are, at least with the deluxe edition that I have, there are several expansions that come with the game. One of those is a modular. They replace the donation tiles up there. So what you can get for your donations. There are some of those that can be replaced. Another one of the expansions are different departments that you can use. So there's a whole other set of those. And then the third expansion is a sort of an asymmetrical start to the game. So in the base game, everybody starts with $12 for goods cubes. Everybody's going to start with one housing project built, as well as be able to move. I think there's like 10 moves that you can perform for your workers that start in your lobby to move them to where you want them to be. That modular expansion that adds the asymmetry, basically everybody's given $50, and additional things cost money out of that 50. So if you wanted to have extra moves, more than 10 moves, you could, but it's going to cost you. If you wanted to start with more projects out on the board, you could do that, but it's going to cost you. Maybe you don't want to start with any extra moves, at which point you're going to get more money. I think that's the one that gives you more money. One of them, well, let's look at it here. I've got it over here. Where is it? There it is. Okay. Actually, I'll put it here on this one because it'll be easier to see. All right, so everybody starts with $50 and then goods cubes. So the middle one here is the base game, essentially. 4 goods cubes, 5 workers in your lobbies, no victory points, and six moves. So you have 6 moves to start the game with to move your workers around. This is 12 plus 16 is 28 plus 10 is 38. 50 minus 38 is $12, which is what you start off with in the base game. So each player can then choose. If you want less goods cubes, it's going to cost you less money. If you want more goods cubes, you're going to have to pay more. How many workers you want in your lobby? If you want less than 5 workers, you can choose to get a little bit of money back, or you can put more workers out and pay more money. Victory points, everybody starts with 0 in the base game, but if you want to actually start with negative victory points, you can get money for that. Or you can start with victory points ahead. You can pay for victory points. Same thing with the number of moves you have in your setup to move your workers around. Base game, you start with 6. You could pay for more or pay for less.
Someone's at the front door.
Hey, somebody's at the front door. Let me look at that real quick and see if that's... Don't know who that person is. We'll talk to them later. You could also do a auction for first players. You can. This is blind bidding though, so you're bidding a certain number of dollars. Whoever bids the most becomes the first player. So that's a little bit of an asymmetrical start to the game. Supposedly, after you play your first couple games, you should never play the game without that, just because it allows for you to make you to customize your agent essentially.
Someone's at the front door.
They are still there. All right. Well, I'm going to cut this short so I can go up and see that person. Thanks for watching, guys.